welcome to our spoilers review of Derek Milman's Swipe Right for Murder. So this book was billed as like a modern Hitchcock kind of spy thing, and I mean, I guess the beginning kind of does start out like a Hitchcock movie where you're like introduced to the character, you're introduced to his friends, and then like he gets himself in a fucked up situation, he has no idea what's going on, and then he has to figure out what all these ultimate forces are doing. But I don't know, I feel like it loses that quite quickly.
You're the Hitchcock expert here, so.
I guess the closest thing it reminded me of was North by Northwest, but like not in any way that I would say yay. But if this was filmed, it would be in like with oversaturated colors. Like things are just like larger than life. That's what I think. Okay, so our story begins with Aiden, and he is a gay kid in New York City staying at a hotel because he's waiting for his family to get there so they can go on a trip. And he decides that he is bored and he wants to hook up with a rando. So he goes on the app Dirty Paws, which is like Grindr or Tinder, something like that, and he finds the nearest guy in his hotel, which happens to be a kid he knows from high school who he thought was straight. And he's like, cool, let's see what happens, because the guy texts him. So he goes to the kid's room. Awful, awkward, weird, and he leaves with like a bad taste in his mouth, and he's just like, okay, that was awful. Let's try something different to like just completely blow this guy out of my mind. So he does, and he hooks up with this older guy named Benoit, and he goes up to Benoit's room, and Benoit's like, oh, we fool around now, and then we make the exchange, and Aiden's like, sure, I guess that's what we call sex, old guy. Alright, and so they fool around, and Aiden falls asleep, and he wakes up in a pool of blood. Benoit is dead. He's super dead. He's been shot in the head. Benoit is dead.
Good poem, Dr. Zeus!
What was the last thing he said? I can't remember, because Benoit is dead.
I'm done, I'm out, this is it. I'm calling an Uber. So the phone rings, and it's this guy being like, well, Mr. Preston, you have our shit, and you have to give it to us. Well, we're coming for you. And he's like, what? What? I'm not Mr. Preston. What?
It's the guy on the other end of the phone. He's like, I know you. I know about your brother's death. And Aiden's like, okay, but who the fuck are you?
And so he feels a connection with this guy, and he doesn't know how to explain, like how to describe it or explain it. He's kind of interested, but at the same time, he's very much terrified.
Like anybody would be. And he sees like a sniper scope kind of scanning the hotel room, and he's like, oh shit, I gotta get out of here. He takes like a drive from Benoit's computer, which he realizes has pictures of him, like pictures that he didn't take or nobody that he knows took. And so he's like, this is real fucking weird. And so he gets out and he realizes that he's being like hunted. And so he goes down to the front desk and he's like, there's been some weird kind of mix up because it says I'm Mr. Preston, and the lady's like, you are Mr. Preston. And he's like, okay, we're leaving now.
So he gets chased by this scary bellhop. There are people on motorcycles. His phone is dying. So his friend manages to call him an Uber. He falls into the Uber and he takes the Uber to this like wild weird party out at a warehouse, and I think it's in Brooklyn.
Yeah. And his friend is just like not really paying attention, but when he finally gets his attention, he's like, yeah, these guys are trying to kill me, points to the motorcycle guys who have followed him, and somebody thinks I'm like a hacker or something. So they manage to give the guys the slip, and they go to a place to crash with another of Aiden's friends. And I
liked the interaction with the third friend.
Yeah.
The third friend is very much like, I guess, like the mother of the group. And keeps turning to the first friend being like, stop upsetting Aiden. And it's like all over him, like hugging him and like protecting him. And it's just, it kind of goes from trying to be the serious novel like right back into the weird screwball comedy that was the Scream All Night, which is what I really liked about Scream All Night. So like those are my favorite moments.
Yeah. And I did like the other friend, but my problem is his two friends, they're like introduced as characters, they give them backstories, and then like Aiden ditches them for the rest of the novel, and you're just like, what?
I kind of get why he does it though. He doesn't want to drag them into it.
I get it, but it's just like, why, like, you could have cut them out entirely. Like, they added nothing to the plot. So Aiden eventually ditches them, and he ends up
getting picked up by two members of the Swans, which is the group of people who are chasing him, and they take him in a car, and they take him to their base of operations, which is basically this really nice house out in suburbia.
And I'm going, no. No. Because, like, the guy's like, yeah, suburbia, nobody looks twice. I'm like, excuse me, suburbia? People are nosy as shit. Like, is your fence got a permit there, Bob? Like, people are nosy. And, like, this is, like, a terrorist group. Like, there's people in and out at all hours of the night, driving motorcycles of all things. People are gonna have questions.
Well, I mean, they throw pretty great parties, so maybe everybody in suburbia, like, likes the parties, the weird barbecues with all the drugs. Hey!
No. So that was really stupid to me. I was like, I cannot get behind this. I get what you're trying to do. No. Aiden quickly puts it together that he's been hearing about all these terrorist attacks with drones, and he realizes that it's the Swans behind the attacks, and that what the codes that they want are actually helping them hack into military drones. It's just too bad Aiden has nothing to do with them.
So what these attacks are is they're pretty much going for people who are, like, extremely homophobic, like senators who are signing bills. And so you're kind of stuck in this position where it's like, okay, like, I see why, like, they're doing it, but, like, murder's bad.
Yeah. And so they are a gay terrorist group, and that's the other thing is I was like, the FBI would be on that so fast. Like, none of this would have been a thing. Now, if they were a white supremacist group, that's another story, but a gay terrorist group, no.
Yes, this is where he meets Scotty and they have their first encounter, and Scotty's like, give me what I want, and he's like, no. Scotty is the leader of the Swans, and he's kind of, like, charismatic, and he was a gender studies professor, and something happened that radicalized him. And so what you find out is that his partner died, and that's what radicalized him. And then you find out later on how his partner died, and you're like, oh, this is so much worse.
Because, like, he had, his partner had been together with him for a while, and he was like, why don't you tell your family? And his partner's like, no, they're super religious, they're gonna fucking hate me. And he encourages him to come out to his family, and then the guy does, and the family disowns him.
And it totally breaks him.
Because Scotty also dumps him, because he's like, you're being too weak about this.
Exactly. So, like, this guy, like, lost his family. He's just, watching Instagram posts of, like, his nieces and nephews, and he wanted a family himself, and Scotty doesn't want a family, and Scotty's just like, you're not attractive now that you're, like, mopey, so get out of my face. And so the partner goes to, like, a hotel and kills himself. And then Scotty's like, oh no, I've never found a love like this love. I lost this love, so I'm doing this in his honor. And it's just like, yeah.
Okay.
I liked how unhinged he was.
Yeah, he was definitely unhinged. Scotty kind of realizes that Aiden isn't Mr. Preston, and he's like, okay, like, let him go. And then the bellhop, who had been following him at the hotel, is like, sure, I'll let him go, and then, like, tries to drown him in the pool. And Aiden murders him with a paperclip. And so Aiden escapes, and the bellboy is dead, and
he's soaking wet, and so he, like, sneaks onto the train, where he runs into Shiloh, who is this college student who's super attractive, and who just happens to have a towel, and, like, helps him get past the people, like, trying to find him on the train. Like, first, the ticket guy, he pays for his ticket because Aiden has no ID or money, and then when the police come on the train looking for him, Shiloh hides him in the bathroom, and that's great. Shiloh goes with him to the hotel, and out of this entire book, that's the only part where I'm like, don't go back to the scene of the crime.
Yeah, right? What are you doing?
So Mr. Preston calls Aiden.
That's it.
And Shiloh's like, it's fine, I'll deal with this. So Shiloh takes the phone into the other room and talks to Mr. Preston, while Aiden is in the room with
Jackson's girlfriend,
Tatiana, and they're talking about it, and she's like, you need to go to the police, what you're doing is ridiculous. And he's like, no, like, if I go to the police, the Swans have threatened to hurt my family. And she's like, it's not your job to protect your family, like, the police will protect your family. And he's like, no, I can't do it. And then Shiloh comes back, and it's like, okay, this is where he wants you to meet him. He wants you to take this bus to this park.
Make it up.
And he's gonna, like, handle it. It's fine.
And then Tatiana's like, I've got shit to do, bye, good luck.
And she leaves. And so then he has a fight with Shiloh because he's like, you're too perfect. Why are you here? Like, it was too coincidental that I ran into you on that train and you even had a towel. And Shiloh's like, you're not, like, a college student like you said you were. This is kind of weird. Bye.
And so Aiden goes to the park, and he's hanging around waiting for Mr. Preston, and then all of a sudden a drone strike attacks. It's crazy, it's chaos, there are guys in the woods with crossbows for some reason.
He calls someone Katniss, which made me laugh.
Yeah. And of course he also sees Shiloh there taking pictures of him, and he realizes that Shiloh is in on this, and so he ends up running into Shiloh later after the attack, and Shiloh's like, no, you're totally crazy. I'm not involved. I was just totally worried about you.
So, what we haven't mentioned is at the beginning of the novel, one of the reasons that he's in New York City, Aiden, is he had a doctor's appointment because they think he has an enlarged heart. So he went to a cardiologist for a test. And so at this point, Aiden is completely and totally worked up. Confronting Shiloh isn't helping, and he thinks he starts having a heart attack. And so Shiloh calls 911 and leaves him there. We find out it's not a heart attack, it's just like a crazy panic attack.
Yeah.
Been there.
Then the FBI picks him up from the hospital and they're like, listen, do we have a story for you, buddy? And it turns out that Aiden has gotten caught in an FBI plot to take down the Swans. And they have this thing called digital dust, which kind of like takes pieces from the internet and like strings it into like a real fake person of whatever they kind of need. But Aiden was just such a good specimen that it just kind of took all of him, including his pictures, and like used it as bait to kind of lure the Swans out with a black hat hacker who's sympathetic to their cause.
Because he looked like a perfect possible member, like having a rocky relationship with his family, being gay, being young,
having like this weird relationship with his friend's dad. And it turns out that after the friend's dad had broken up with him, Aiden had been emailing him, and he had just been kind of like leaning into the drama of the whole situation and like, you broke my heart, I'm never gonna be the same again. And then he starts kind of being like, I think I might want to kill myself. And so he was sending these emails to the guy. Eventually he just hears that the guy committed suicide, and he was like, oh shit, I did something real bad. The computer program picked up on this and was like, yes, he would make a perfect candidate.
And so they ask him to possibly go make a drop. He's in the washroom in the FBI safe house, and he finally gets his phone charged. And Scotty calls him, and it's like, we know that you're not who they say you are. We know that you're Aiden and not Mr. Preston. And we know that if you show up with files, that it's fake. Like, you don't have the information we want. So, by the way, we weren't the ones who did that strike on the park. And in the phone, there's a message typed out being like, it wasn't the Swans. And he's like, oh no, the FBI set me up.
No, that wasn't even it. It was like, it wasn't us. And he's like, who's us?
The FBI set me up. And so they go to make the drop, and Aiden just goes with them. Like, he knows that he knows the USB stick is useless, and he thinks, you know what, they can't get a hold of Shiloh. They think Shiloh has been turned by the cult.
Because he's actually a secret undercover FBI agent.
You know what, they need a guy on the inside, and the Swans want me, so I will go on the inside. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, and he has like an implanted mic in his mouth. And so he goes to a weird Bioshock party, which fine, I'm there for it. He full on tells it, like, calls it out that this is a Bioshock party. I'm just like,
I see what you
see, yeah, drugs.
All the drugs.
And then we see that Scotty and Shiloh are canoodling on a couch, and Aiden is just like, oh, my heart. He's in deep cover, man.
Like, just let it go. It's fine. Scotty and Aiden and Shiloh kind of have this big blowout where Aiden's like, no, I'm not with you. And Scotty's like, well, fine. If you're not with me, and like you and Shiloh had this thing, so for Shiloh to prove that he is still with me, he's gonna shoot you. So Shiloh does, and he shoots him twice in the chest, and Aiden plays dead. And so he's hiding out in this closet when shit kind of just goes down. Scotty has kind of disappeared. The party has turned into like a massacre, like a zombie Bioshock massacre.
Because the drugs were bad.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Bioshock! If you're gonna have a Bioshock bunny mask party, like, there is only one outcome.
So Aiden realizes that Scotty's ultimate plan is to go to this theme park and like booby trap the hell out of it so a whole bunch of middle America kids die and the whole of America is shook. And
so he and Shiloh go to stop it, and they manage to get people off some of the rides, but Scotty takes Aiden hostage and puts him on a roller coaster, and they're riding this death-trapped roller coaster, and Scotty's like, yeah, no, like, the bombs are, like, spread out on this thing. Who knows when it's gonna blow? It's a chance.
You're just like, oh, great. Dramatic to the end, aren't you, Scotty? The whole thing ends with, like, the roller coaster blowing up, and Scotty falls out of the cart, and Aiden tries to save him, but he can't save him, and Scotty dies, and then Aiden's like, well, yep, back to real life now.
You know who would have been a good Scotty? Christoph Waltz.
Mm-hmm.
Because he can do, like, the distinguished professor thing and also can be a little bit unhinged. So he could walk that line pretty good.
Yeah, I can see that.
Also, because I put him up for everything, Idris Elba. I think Idris Elba can do the crazy eyes.
It's true, but, like, I feel like I'd lean into the Christoph Waltz.
Idris Elba for Batman 2025.
That I agree with. So the book ends, and Aiden is like, yeah, well, I realized that I need a lot of kind of help in my life. I went to therapy, my family went to therapy. I started dating the guy from high school that I hooked up with at the beginning, and I thought I might see Shiloh again, but I haven't really heard from him, and that's okay, and I'm okay with that. And
I really liked the epilogue.
Yeah, the epilogue was good.
I like that he doesn't end up with Shiloh. I like that they acknowledge that Shiloh has to go through some stuff himself to, like, deprogram, and they talked about how when you go deep undercover, you do tend to gain some sympathy for the group you're with because
you just have to, otherwise you can't act convincing. Yeah. Basically, that's how the book ends, is Aiden is doing better. And I thought it was fine, like, I don't know, I just wanted the book to be over as fast as possible.
There were definitely aspects of it that I really liked. I think it really shined in the dialogue, especially when the dialogue got screwball comedy.
Yeah.
Like, there's a sequence where Aiden's having dinner with his family, and everyone's like, why are you going to this family dinner? You shouldn't. Like, Jesus Christ. And he goes anyway, and while they're in this restaurant, just, like, his face shows up on screen, and his mother loses her shit. And it's just like, have you been radicalized? And I'm just like, and she's just screaming, and the father's screaming, and the sister's like, I want you to be in my children's life. He does dysfunctional family drama so well.
And I mean, when I recount the plot, I think it sounds better to me than the experience was, and I can kind of see that Hitchcock arc, but reading it, I wasn't into it.
It could also be that it just wasn't, like, it's not, if it were to be adapted into some other type of medium, it might play better.
Yeah, actually, I think it could probably work better as a movie, and it would probably kind of smooth it out, and you could get some real, like, artistic shots, like I said, with, like, the oversaturated color and the exaggeratedness of it. But I don't know, just the experience of reading it was, to me, that's fine. I'm still gonna read whatever Derek Milman writes because I really liked the last book he did.
Yeah, Scream All Night has stayed with me for, yeah, I think about it a lot.
So anyways, that was our review of Swipe Right for Murder. Let us know what you guys thought in the comments, and we will see you next time. Bye!